Parenting today comes with endless options, pressures, and comparisons. Social media, school expectations, and even well-meaning advice can leave parents feeling like they're constantly falling short. But what if you didn't have to get everything just right to raise happy, resilient kids? Today, we're joined by a fabulous expert, Knippenberg, a child and family therapist with over 40 years of experience and author of Shame-Free Parenting, Building Resiliency in Times of Hardship, Guns, and Social Media. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Meg.
So let's talk about shame-free parenting and why are parents struggling so much today with feelings of guilt and self-doubt.
Yeah. Well, historically, it's always been there. We know that parents struggle with how they parent, and they question themselves and they wonder about that stuff long before the newer mom influencers and they're promoting gentle parenting, which makes every parent feel awful if you watch it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Parents have, my parents wondered about things, other grandparents, great grandparents, and exercise I've done with thousands of families. When I'm seeing a family, I'll ask the child, well, what's a time you remember that was upsetting to you with your parents? And they'll have a story. And then the parents are like, I don't even remember that.
Right.
And then you ask the parents, what's a time you thought that? And they have a story. And the child's like, that didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
So I've never had it match. In fact, at one of my lectures, our daughter, who's now 19, we adopted her at 7. She was in there at the book table, and I shared a story. At my lectures, I always ask the audience to think of a time that you felt guilt or shame about your parenting. And then later in the lecture, I go over 8 points of why you can let it go. But I don't have the audience share their shame moment, but I shared mine. It was a story about my daughter. And from the back of the audience, she yelled out, I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
So it's an historical issue, and people wondering about how to parent best has been around forever. The new mom influencers like to make you think that they have a buzz term for it. They're changing the system, breaking the cycle. And so if I were to ask you, and you asked me for parenting advice, and I said, or grandparenting, like both of us, and I said, best thing to do is listen lots, talk little, and be slow to anger.
Mm.
That sounds like gentle parenting, right?
Yes.
Well, that was written 2,000 years ago.
Exactly.
And then if I said to you, parents shouldn't provoke their children. That was written 4,000 years ago.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it's been around forever. Interesting enough, though, since the 1970s to now, there's been more parenting books written ever in history before. But now it's just gotten hyper-focused on your parenting when there is really no research that you're going to change your child's trajectory by how you parent, as long as you're this side of good enough.
Yeah.
And I end every podcast, relax parents, you just have to be this side of good enough.
Mm-hmm.
There is no super parenting. There's no research on that. The trend now is to think parents are like engineers. You're engineering this child to be something more than their genetics are. Mm-hmm. And really that is not possible. What you are is a shepherd. You just shepherd your children. You keep them alive. That's number one. And you shepherd to green pastures. You expose them to green pastures, but you can't make them eat the grass. Right. That's up to them. Right. So that's all you do is you're just shepherding them along. There's only one thing they ever found in the research that could increase your child's mental health and well-being that will last a lifetime. And they've only found one factor that could ever do that. And it's not money. Money burns out for happiness and well-being at about age 30. It helps you get a house sooner, go to fancy college, get a job, career started. That's about it. Mm-hmm. The only one thing they've ever found is parental kindness. If you as a parent are kind to the postal clerks, postal worker, kind to the service people at the restaurant, kind to the grocery workers, kind to your neighbors, your kids will pick up on that, and they will be kind for the rest of their lives. And we know in the research that kindness has great benefits for the receiver, but also good for the person who's being kind. It triggers your empathy system. You feel good about what you've done, how you helped others. And it really comes down to making your empathy a verb. So if you as a parent are making your empathy a verb in your community, in your family, in your school, that's going to pass on to your children. And that will give them a little advantage over the lifetime. But by and large, you just have to be good enough. And your kids are going to be who they're going to be. You can't change their genetic trajectory. And if I might share, we lost my mother at 98 a couple of days ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the two things, thank you. She was ready to go, and she wanted to be with my dad and with Jesus again. And the two things that I could tell you that I got from her, but multiple things. I wrote her a whole list last fall and read it to her when she was still more with it. But her kindness, it rubbed off on all of us kids. We're just kind people, and that came from my mother. And the other is just this deep faith, very simple faith that life is okay. Things work out in the wash, that you trust in God and you trust in your neighbors, and everything is okay. And that's really a basis of resiliency. So we talk about resiliency for our kids. It was resiliency for my mother. She went through lots of hardships in her young adult life, including World War II. But she was happy every day and smiling and kind to everybody.
I'm proud to say my 32-year-old son, about 6 months ago, came and said, Mom, I'm so grateful. I learned kindness from Dad. And I thought, you're absolutely right, because when you're around kind people, you become kinder.
Yeah.
I think I've become kinder because my husband's very kind, and he doesn't talk that much, but he listens and listens. And I think that's huge. So I love that you say that. You counseled a lot of the kids from the Columbine High School after the shooting, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes, we did. One of my offices, we have several offices in the Denver metro area, and one was 3 blocks away from the school. It was in a church, and many of our youth group families and children, teens, went to Columbine. It was their neighborhood school, and we were a lockdown shelter during the crisis, and then provided trauma triage that night, every night for months. It was something that changed me forever, without a doubt. And you couldn't pay me enough money to do it again. But it was this sense of a calling that I've always had, that I'm here to help children. And that's what I do. And no matter whether it's minor incidents or something major like that, it was a life-changing experience for so many of those students.
Has the school opened up again, or did they build?
Oh, it opened. No, they opened it about the next fall. Maybe it was 6 months after. They did remodel the library area, and they put up a memorial inside the school. I think that took about a year and a half, and the students went to another high school during that time.
Yeah.
But the library is where most of the carnage took place. So that all got remodeled.
Well, that's a very, very traumatic thing for them, but also for you. But I just wanted to mention that to our listeners, because you are a very seasoned therapist. I mean, you've seen it all. If you've seen that. But I love that you say you want to help children, and yet this is a book for parents, because I think that one of the best things that we can do, I'm not a therapist, I'm a pediatrician, but is to help parents, because parents have the power in the kid's life. And, it's interesting. I felt a lot of guilt. We have 4 kids, but our oldest daughter's wonderful. And, but she was a handful. She was hard, very strong-willed. I would tell her to do something. She'd say, I don't think so. She was 5. And she's fabulous now. She's very even keeled, great kids, good job, and so forth, and a great husband. But I always felt, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Because I felt like I was always reprimanding her. And then our other 3 were pretty easygoing. But as a parent and a pediatrician, I wish I had this book. And I was told by people around me, you must be anxious. You must be this. I thought, but I'm not. I'm not an anxious person. I must be doing something wrong. And then she had a baby, and it was her first daughter, and guess what she was like? Just like her mother,
The
and
apple didn't fall far.
oh, you know what? And it made me feel so good because it
Yeah,
made me
yeah,
realize this is genetics, and to watch
right. Yeah.
my strong-willed daughter parent her strong-willed daughter is wonderful. And, I mean, they clash all the time, but I love strong-willed kid. These are the kids that are gonna go somewhere.
Yeah,
You
they
don't
are.
really have to worry about them. They're not gonna try to please everybody. But I digress. Let's talk, about parents again. The
Yeah,
pressure to be perfect. I
yeah.
see this in parents all the time. They're anxious because they're reading and they're thinking and they're not the kind of parent they think they should be according to this blogger, or a gentle parent. So talk about parent shaming that's going on in our
Oh, yeah, that's happening, and it's not just for parents, it's for teenagers and everybody who's on social media.
Mhm,
It's everywhere, and everyone's trying to give their advice to parents on this will work for your kid. Well, first of all, as you experienced with your daughter, compared to your other 4, we have 4, by the way,
mhm,
um, they they're all different, and my first book, Wired and Connected, is about social brain development,
mhm,
that any parent could understand, and one of the points is I look at 3, 4 areas of the brain, and they're all different for every kid.
mm.
So if you just look at Winnie the Pooh for temperament, all children have a temperament, which is sort of the emotion you go to when you're stressed. And some kids are Winnie the Pooh. They
Yeah.
just, they fall down, they get up, they brush off, and they say, "Oh, bother, but I'll find honey in a tree,"
I have a
right?
couple grandkids like
Yeah,
that, but yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
Mhm.
and then some kids are like Piglet. Something happens to them, and they become consumed with anxiety and convinced that they can't do whatever, like going on a walk. They have to go home because walks are dangerous,
Yeah.
and they're full of anxiety, worry warts. They used to say when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And some kids are like Rabbit. He falls over a rock on a walk and he gets mad, and he's mad at the rock, and he hates the rocks, and he thinks no rock wants to be his friend, and throws them and kicks them, and he's all upset till he calms down with a cup of tea.
Mhm.
Uh, and then you have your Eeyores who, when they fall over the rock, they say, "Even the rocks don't want to be my friend," and they're down in the dumps and depressed.
Mhm.
And then you have Tiggers, which is the kid who falls over the rock and says, "That was great. I'm going to do it again."
Bouncy ones. Yes.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
just keep
Yeah.
doing it, and they're like, "That's the best walk I've ever been on." Well,
Mm.
there's like 4 or 5 different ways kids are different just based on their temperament and how they emotionally react to things. Then you throw in their frontal lobe functioning and impulse control. And some kids have really good impulse control, others have none.
Mm.
And so when their emotions rise up in the brain, they just come out. And they're upset, they're anxious, they're mad. Other kids have really good self control and it stops the emotions. And it actually kicks it down to a part of your brain, your right orbital cortex, where you can think about your feelings. And I was seeing a little third grade girl and her mother the other day, and this is where they tie in together. And she's been fourth grade. She's been struggling with kind of getting overly upset about small things. And I gave her numerous suggestions. The one she liked the best, I said, "I want you to think to yourself before you do anything, is this a mouse sized problem or is this an elephant sized problem?"
Oh.
And she really loved that. And then with her mother, I said, and who has the mother anxiety and
Mhm.
feels she needs to figure it out for her daughter, every problem.
Mhm.
And so what has happened when the daughter gets upset, then mom starts giving suggestions or ideas, and then the girl would just get worse, right?
Yeah.
And I said to mom, I said, "I really want you to trim your anxiety back and let her handle it herself. You have to give her confidence that she can get through her emotions. And it's not your job as a parent to solve them for her.
Right.
You're trying to help her solve it herself." And,
Mhm.
and so they have a little warm, fuzzy jar at home. And anytime the daughter is able to see it's a mouse sized problem, they throw in a warm fuzzy. And when mom controls her anxiety and doesn't get involved, she gets to throw in a warm fuzzy. And when they fill up the jar, they're going to do I told them to think about it this week, what they want to do together. But we know that for parents, so if a parent's temperament is more anxious, that does impact your child. They're going to feel more anxious. If a parent's temperament is overly angry, That's going to have implications on your child.
Mhm.
So and the same with Eeyore, what I tell in my book, it's normal parenting means you get mad sometimes, and it's okay for your kids to know you're mad.
Mhm.
That's just silly because a real attachment in relationships is built on discord and then repair.
Mm.
So we were upset with each other. Now we forgive each other. It's called reproach bound in psychoanalytic thought. We come back together, we apologize, we give a redo hug,
Mhm.
and that builds strong relationship.
Mhm.
Never expressing your emotions to your child because you're upset and you have to stay gentle does not do that.
Yeah.
Those kids are going to be fragile the first time somebody that's not their parents gets upset with them.
Yes.
And that happens. It's also silly to say to parents, never yell at your child.
Mhm.
I was doing a talk for a Christian school here in Denver, an audience, and I said, Jesus got angry once, but that was called justified anger. But he never had a 4-year-old. If he had raised a 4-year-old,
Yeah.
he might have been getting mad
Oh, yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
impossible. And then
It's a yeah.
to be told that you should shame yourself because you yelled at your kid. Well, this is just nonsense. It's not possible
Yeah.
not to lose it sometimes.
Right.
You just have to be good enough.
Yes.
That's
And to learn to say you're sorry.
right. Yeah.
Because kids are so forgiving.
Oh, they
I'm
are.
sorry I yelled. I was out of control. This isn't about you, it's about me. I'm so sorry. And they'll go, "Oh, okay, good." And they
Yeah.
go on with about their day. But I think if you keep yelling and never
Then,
tell the child you're
yeah.
sorry, then they
Yeah.
start to think something's wrong with them.
Because then you don't have the reproachment, the repair. And the resiliency comes through the repairing, coming back together, and making your relationship stronger, that it can survive adversity.
Mhm.
But if you're constantly yelling and then not owning that as a parent or asking for forgiveness from your child and apologizing, then they are going to tip over eventually.
Yeah.
It becomes too much for them and it provokes them too much.
Yeah.
So that's why what I say to parents is, hey, if it's too much, go get help yourself
Right.
and work on it.
Right.
But good enough is good enough. One of the things they have found in the research that parents, it's the research is on what's the number one cause for behavioral problems in children at home. And the answer is parental inconsistency. So that means if you say to your teenager who has the stinky size 13 gunboat tennis shoes, which if you raised a boy, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And they're laying there in the living room, and the family rule is you take your shoes and put them in the bedroom. Well, before COVID, I would say, you know, yeah, 80% of the time, tell them to take away the shoes. Get them out of their room, get them off the computer, tell them to get their shoes out of here. Um, and that's like a B. You just need a B at parenting. Unless you have a teenager or a preschooler, then 70% is good enough. Because there are so many times when you're so brain damaged as a parent, you're exhausted. And
Yes.
it's 8:30 at night and you just want to go to bed or read a book. And you take those gunboat shoes and you throw them by the kid's door and leave it at that and not provoke the situation or follow the rules like they're supposed to be. And after COVID and during COVID, I'm like, whoa, I think 60% is good enough
Yeah.
because we weren't meant to have this much time together. Our ancestors never lived that way. We were out and about doing things all day.
Right.
Unless you had a preschool or a teenager, then 51% of the time is good enough for consistency.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
if your consistency is 20% of the time, the rules have no meaning.
Yeah.
And so kids are going to misbehave. Kids need structure. They need to know, here's the routines, here's what we're doing today, here's what we're doing tomorrow. Good school teachers have those rules posted in the room. The kids always know what's expected. The rules are always the same. And that's what you're trying to emulate. But just 51 to 60% is good enough.
Yeah.
If it's 20%, then you need to get help as a parent.
Yeah. Let's talk about shame versus accountability, because
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And so how do parents set good boundaries with their kids and correct their behavior without shaming them? Because there's
Right.
got to be a balance between discipline
Right.
and fostering
Yeah.
self-worth.
Yeah. Well, I think I like the idea of pleasant but firm. So
Mhm.
you're going to be firm in the rules and applications and what behavior is acceptable and not, but you're going to be gentle or pleasant in how you approach that as much as you can. There are some times when you can't, and that's okay. It's okay to lose it sometimes. That's just fine. But by and large, you're just saying, hey, here's what the rules are, and we're going to follow these, and not getting too heated up yourself all the time about it. So just kind of pleasant but firm.
Mhm.
The shame is a unique human emotion, and all emotions serve a purpose for our survival. So guilt would be a lesser form of shame. You feel guilty about something. Shame is when you have this sense that you really failed your moral purpose, that you have a sense of right and wrong, and you didn't live up to that standard. Now, for younger children, they don't really have that fully developed about what their moral purpose is and the importance of living in community with others and respecting everyone's humanity. But as elementary age it gets going, middle school, and children have more control over their decisions and their emotions and their thoughts, um, that's it's okay for them to feel some shame sometimes.
Mhm.
And my mother, who is no longer with us, was more than happy to tell us, "You should be ashamed of yourself,"
Yeah, yeah,
when it was something big.
yeah.
And I don't think I heard that more than 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
But that's okay to tell your kids too.
Mhm.
And if you've really messed up as a parent, then some shame is warranted.
Okay.
And the shame helps you from doing it again.
Mhm.
So if you realized, you yelled at the kids and you had been consuming too much alcohol or something, and you really feel remorse about that and some shame, that's okay. And to tell your kids, I feel ashamed of how I behaved. That's below my moral standard.
What are some of the most common ways parents make kids feel ashamed?
I think I love the idea of you correct the behavior, not the child.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're saying, well, you're such a bad kid,
Mhm.
or you keep doing that over and over and over again. And it's those you messages, like you're
Mhm.
doing this, you're doing that. What's wrong? What's wrong with you? That would be one out of my past. Not my parents, but the neighborhood parents. It was
Yeah.
a fairly primitive time.
Yeah.
But it's when you're constantly going after their sense of self
Mhm.
versus realizing the phrase in my first book, I talk about the president, your child's president, which is your prefrontal cortex. And it's where the upper area helps you pay attention, stay organized, manage time. The lower area is for impulse control. And I often might say to my kids or somewhat to a student I consulted at a school for years, over 35 years, two of them, I'd say, you didn't really use your president on that one, did you?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
they'll be like,
Yeah.
"No, I didn't."
No. No.
Said, "Yeah, the president's really helpful, but you have to kinda stop and think first. What should I do? And should I tell a joke like that, to someone?" And middle school is brutal.
Yeah.
For boys, empathy drops in half,
Mhm.
between the start of puberty and maybe about sophomore year in high school.
Mhm.
It does come back, but they get flooded with testosterone, and so they're all edgy, and then they wanna fit in with the group. They wanna fit in with their buddies,
Mhm.
and that's primitive in our brains. Our brains are wired to survive, and human brains are wired to survive together.
Mhm.
And if you're kicked out of the tribe, of the group of friends, you don't survive, you don't
Right.
exist. Same for females, you see that all the time in the female brain, the fear of being embarrassed, the fear of being rejected by the group. And
Mhm.
now that's all accelerated on social media, there's so much. But you might have that beautiful middle school son who you've taught all the right values, respecting women, respecting others, and then they repeat a joke they heard that shamed one of their female classmates just horribly,
Mhm.
and embarrassed her. That's a time when you say, "Yeah, that's when you should be ashamed of."
Yeah.
And next time, you have to use your president to really think about, "Should I do that or not? Or what's another way I could be included by the other group of boys without having to resort to teasing and bullying? Maybe there's
Right.
other ways I can fit in."
Parents always think that it's girls who are so sensitive and girls getting their feelings hurt and being embarrassed and having a hard time. But I have found that during those high school years, when a boy experiences a breakup with a girlfriend,
Oh,
often they take it harder than the girl does
yeah, yeah,
because the girl
yeah,
talks to her friends about it, but a
right.
boy could feel ashamed.
Yeah, yeah, and embarrassed,
Hmm.
right, and brokenhearted, because traditionally, and this is still the case, but males are more the pursuer of the female, and you're supposed to ask the girl out for the dance or whatever. It's not as like that quite as much. Now you can go to dances by yourself or with a group of friends. You don't have to have a date. In the old days, you were supposed to have a date or you didn't go.
Hmm.
And so they're the ones asking, and then they get rejected
Yeah.
and they feel horrible. And they often won't tell their buddies. What they might say is something derogatory about her to their friends, but they're not going to come on and say, "Man, my heart is just bleeding
Yeah.
when she broke up with me."
Right.
It's going to come out more in a derogatory comment and keeping them to themselves
Right.
versus having the peers that you share with. And females, more you're right, are more likely to reach out to their friends or maybe even talk to their parents about that. And having apparently both males and females, our girls will talk forever about
Yeah. Yeah.
it. They're like, okay, I need to go to bed.
Right. Yeah.
It's after 9 o'clock. I'm done.
I'm done. Yeah.
And the boys, not so much.
We only have a couple minutes left, but I'd like you to talk to the single mothers out there or the
Yeah.
single dads.
Well, and I was a single father for about 5 years
Uh-huh.
and actually really enjoyed it quite a bit. But I know how stressful it can be. And all parents are under stress. We know from the Surgeon General's advisory back in the fall that we have record numbers of parents struggling with mental illness
Yes.
and just their own financial well-being, their worries, their fears about their kids, their fears of school shootings, their fears of social media and their kids. Their finances are overwhelmed. We're record lows. And one of the statistics is very high, and this is particularly true for single parents, is feeling lonely.
Mm.
Because as a single parent, you are working as fast as you can, and you're so dang tired, and maybe they fussed about going to bed, and you're just exhausted. And as much as you can, reach out to other parents. So I was in a position as a single dad that there were some days I could make it by 6 o'clock to pick up my son from the after school program. And there were sometimes I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I relied on his friends' moms were very helpful to me. And we even had one of his buddies where I was off on Mondays. So I picked the boys up from school on Thursdays. They picked my son up because that was a night I worked late.
Mhm.
But I had to rely on those other parents, and they were more than happy to do that.
Mhm.
You just have to be willing to ask. The more you isolate as a single parent, the harder it's going to be.
Mhm.
It's all about asking for support. And then you really have to trim back on expectations and just focus on the basic things.
Mhm.
You just focus, okay, what are a couple rules I want to enforce at home? What do I want to try to do with my kids to give them some happiness, to have family time together? Rituals are great for families. So if a single parent or you're not a single parent, you have a partner, make a family ritual every Sunday night. You're going to play cards.
Yep.
When I was a kid, we used to have tomato soup and grilled cheese on Sunday night,
Mhm.
and then we'd watch Bonanza.
We are really disclosing our age
Yeah,
here.
we're in the
Be-
same group,
Yes,
but it's
but
those
there's a
two.
lot of wisdom that comes with age, and so that's why
Yeah,
I'm so grateful for the work that I get to do.
and the traditions with the kids, those rituals really are good for their mental health and their resiliency,
Yeah.
and those are the things they're going to remember. So in the sea of chaos, you need one island of stability. So as a single parent, if you could say, okay, on Monday nights, whatever it is, we're going to watch Peppa Pig
Yeah.
together. I know that from the grandkids.
Yeah.
Or we're going to do family game night. Those are the things over time that the children will remember as adults,
Mhm.
that we always had this time when we would do this together.
Yeah.
That will stick with them much longer than you racing around. Now you can get your groceries delivered, which is a good thing. That saves a lot of time. But they're going to remember that over all the other stuff you're trying to take care of in the chaos, and they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And it's okay for them to wear the same clothes to school the next day.
Yes.
It's just fine.
It's just fine. I was talking with my son-in-law who loves ice fishing. And
Oh,
I
we
s
do too.
yeah, and I said to him, "That sounds like the dumbest, most boring sport I can imagine." He said, "Oh, no, no." He said, "It's so fun, and the kids like it." My
Yeah.
guest has been Craig Knippenberg. He is a child and family therapist, and he has a lot of experience, as you can tell from our conversation. He has a wonderful book that every parent should read, Shame-Free Parenting: Building Resiliency in Times of Hardship, Guns, and Social Media. It will make every parent feel so much better about the work that they're doing. And sometimes you just have to really stick with the wisdom of somebody who's sort of been there, done that. Thank you so much for coming and joining me today. And we need to do another episode on your other book.
Oh,
And
I would love that. Thank you
so
so much.
you bet, if parents want to or people want to get hold of you, learn
Yeah.
more about you, where should they go?
My business website, we do all kinds of mental health treatment here in Denver. Metro Denver is CraigKnippenberg.com.
Mhm.
And Knippenberg has a silent K on the front.
Mhm.
So you have to remember that. And then my book's on legitparenting.com. My podcast is called Legit Parenting. And the only last thing, if I could share, um, for parents, is you have to remember by the time they're 18, they're going to have this stained glass window of themselves.
Mhm.
Stained glass window is going to be made up of billions of pieces of glass. And if you're a good enough parent, most of those pieces of glass are going to be beautiful. And sure, there's going to be a few little sections that they have some negative memories that someday when they get older, they're going to say to you about how you didn't parent them right. Then they'll have their own kids and then they'll be like, oh, mom
Oh,
was right or dad was
that's
right.
right. Yep.
It is hard,
Yep.
but their glass isn't going to get shattered as long as you're good enough.
Yep.
Their stained glass window is going to be beautiful.
Many professionals invest in an executive coach for personal development and a trainer for physical fitness. Now, you can hire me, a best-selling author and expert coach, to help you raise great kids. I've over 35 years practicing pediatrics and an extensive experience decoding what your kids need and think about you. I've helped countless parents just like you. You can talk directly with me through private or group coaching. I'll listen and provide a customized plan to help you be the best dad you can be. Sign up now through the link in the episode notes. Your kids are counting on you. Let's make your family's future brighter together.